everyone, and welcome to The Hash, your daily beat on crypto and culture. My name is Naomi Brockwell, and I'm delighted to be joined by our other wonderful co-hosts. We have Ben Powers, Jen Sanasie, Will Foxley, and Zack Seward. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hello.
It's good to be here.
Happy Tuesday.
Let's throw straight to what I think is some pretty exciting news. 50K. Let's just chat about that. I'm gonna hand that over to Will. So, have we hit it?
That's
some
right.
sources say we have, some say we haven't.
No, I'm a little disappointed you said you didn't realize it had been broken last night. What are you looking at? You're not looking at the price 24 hours like the rest of us? It's a little upsetting.
Like getting a ticker, my alarm goes off every time it gets close.
Exactly. That's what it should be like. I mean, that's what's like for the rest of us, right, Zach? That's what you're doing. You don't sleep at night.
Yeah. I wire it straight into the brain, so it's always there behind the eyelids. Yeah.
No joke. I've been having dreams about the Bitcoin price the last few days, and it's just completely unpleasant.
Unpleasant. It's only been going up. This is great. Well, anyways, since the beginning of the year, Bitcoin price has been up about 70%, if I'm looking at the numbers correctly, which is pretty incredible in and of itself. And we broke that 50K barrier on most major U.S. exchanges last night, or early this morning, I should say. There's kind of been a tug of war between that psychological barrier, 50K, for a while. I think a lot of people have sell walls just kind of set there, like take some profit off the table, make 50K. An interesting piece that came out earlier this morning was from VC Fred Wilson, who's a pretty prominent evangelist, I'll say, in the crypto space. And he wrote about Bitcoin's 50K break, as well as where does this cycle kind of end for all asset classes? Because as we know from the whole year, since March 12th of last year, asset prices have just been increasing while interest rates have been dropping. So it's kind of the question is like, where do we get off this roller coaster? Does the price keep going up? It can't keep going up forever. And how much is the Bitcoin price kind of caught up in this general rise of all asset classes? Zach, as someone who's been an editor in the space for quite a while, you're looking at this price, probably pretty incredible. But what are you thinking in terms of like the larger macro picture, or maybe just the cryptocurrency scene itself, like NFTs?
Yeah, I think this Bitcoin thing has legs. I don't know. It's just not going away. You know, this 50K is a huge milestone for the original cryptocurrency. It's funny to think back to that March crash of last year when it was all the way down at 3.8, I believe, and it has rallied through just a staggering run of all-time highs. So it's been really remarkable to watch. I think that 50K number is a nice round number that's obviously going to draw a lot of headlines and a lot of interest, and also again that sell wall. But outside of the round number, I mean, I think that there are certainly predictions for a much higher price of Bitcoin, and it seems as though we are going in fits and starts toward that higher number. And it'll be interesting to chronicle over the next 12 months or so if this bull market continues. And then, I think the nature of Bitcoin to date has been, bull markets have been followed by pretty significant bear markets. I was hired into CoinDesk during a bear market, so that's sort of my natural habitat. Covering this bull run has been different and has been exhausting. And I think 50 is just one milestone of many that are going to be coming up in the next few months. That's pretty much all I got. Naomi, you've been watching this space longer than I. What is 50K? What does this moment mean to you?
It means that the US dollar is really going downhill. I tend to look at, where is the floor of the US dollar? It keep losing value. We're printing trillions and trillions of dollars. That's not going to stop anytime soon. That's going to escalate through this year. So I see the Bitcoin price going up as long as that's continuing. I see precious metals going up as well. I see people trying to find places to put their assets other than cash, because people are understanding that they're just going to lose all of their savings if they keep it in cash. So, I mean, it's definitely, I don't want to be like a downer. This is really exciting. I'm super pumped to see that price. I think it is important to just kind of reconcile that with the fact that we do lose at least 2% a year, and we're seeing a huge amount of inflation that's just being pumped into the stock market right now. We're not really seeing the effects of that in the wider economy really escalating yet, but a lot of economists predict that it is going to come.
I'll push back a little bit because I think the data on inflation is still pretty prospective at this point. If you look at some of the key indicators, it hasn't really kicked in yet. So I think a lot of people in this space are anticipating that this is something that will come, but to date, it has not yet come. So that is still something that I think we're going to have to track going forward, sort of on the macro picture.
I think it depends how much gravitas you give to the consumer price index. That's, kind of been kicked out as a credible source by a lot of people. People like Gene Epstein have said, he predicts it's not going to happen soon, but he thinks within 10 years that we're going to see some sort of hyperinflation as this tipping point just like escalates into a flood. So, we're going to have to see. You've had libertarian doomsayers for like decades say it's coming, and people have lost a lot of money by saying, okay, it's coming, I'm going to prep for it, and it never came. So, your guess is as good as mine. Gene's been pretty conservative on these estimates, so I tend to agree with his estimate that it's going to be like in the next 10 years. But yeah, we're going to have to see.
Yeah, really quick before we move to the next segment. Go ahead, Jen.
Will. I was just going to say, I just want to issue a quick warning after. Okay, let's do the price predictions. All I was going to say is after yesterday's Wall Street
prices,
story, don't everyone go out and take personal loans and put it into Bitcoin. Do your research. If you're jumping on the headlines and the bandwagon, it would be really sad to see the story we talked about yesterday play out for people who are looking to invest in the space. Prediction time.
Absolutely.
Jen, you start. Where are we going? Where's this bull market top out?
Oh, I don't know. I think, okay, I'm going to go ahead and say we hit 100,000 by the end of the year.
So you're bearish.
Wow,
okay.
all right.
Ben.
That's me.
Ben, what you got?
I'm gonna go with like 60,000 or something. I think this is a bit of a feedback loop, but it makes sense for the times we're in at the moment. Prove me wrong. That's not going to be any problem for me.
Zach, Naomi.
I am not in the prediction. I'm not in the prediction market, so I will abstain from summoning the crystal ball. It's not really my strong suit.
Yeah, I'm going to be
in crypto space.
I'm going to be lame like Zach. I don't give price predictions, but I am long-term bullish Bitcoin. I'll say that.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, that was boring.
I'm sorry to disappoint, Jen. You're right. I predict 1 million within the month. It's going to be huge. Buy everything. All right, this is not financial advice, guys.
Disclaimer,
Educate yourself.
Well, let's boot it over to Zach to talk about someone who is even more bullish than any of us on Bitcoin, MicroStrategy.
Ah, yes, Sailor Mania, my guy. Speaking of borrowing to buy Bitcoin, MicroStrategy, the publicly traded business intelligence firm, has just issued something like $600 million in debt to new investors. These are senior convertible notes, so that they can get some more cash to buy Bitcoin. This is something that MicroStrategy has done in the past. They did a similarly large one, I think, in December of 2020, around $600 million as well. This, upon completion, will bring Michael Saylor's Bitcoin. I keep picturing like Michael Saylor, like as Scrooge McDuck, like diving off of the diving board into the pool of coins. So that vault,
microchips. Ow!
No, just at the actual gold Bitcoin. Come on, what they look like.
Coin?
You know that's real. So anyway, when they get that cash and then make that buy, the vault, the swimming pool vault will be a little bit fuller for the ceremonial dive. So that's just the latest and greatest evolution in MicroStrategy's very bullish approach to accumulating Bitcoin. I guess I'm going to kick this back to Will. We were talking yesterday about MicroStrategy rolling out their Bitcoin blockchain data analytics product. They're actually hiring for that team. But the pace at which this company accumulates Bitcoin is really quite striking. What are you looking at when you're looking at MicroStrategy in the coming months?
Yeah, that's a huge question. So I guess I'll try to tackle it from an investor perspective. I feel like some institutional buyers may want to purchase them as a stock and then get some exposure to Bitcoin. I think that's the the biggest way I've seen people speak about it. Since there's no Bitcoin ETF in the US right now, you can only gain exposure to Bitcoin through a few different loopholes, like Grayscale, or there's a few other ones that are coming to product right now. I mean, you can buy Bitcoin yourself and hold it, but I don't think a lot of institutions or regular folk want to like hold that themselves because that's a huge burden. So that's the way I would see it. It is interesting they keep doing this. And last time, I think they were able to pay off their convertible debt pretty quickly. So maybe they can do that again. But this is like a much higher average purchase price than they did for the last two purchases. I think the last two purchases average in around like 19,000 per coin. And, we're double that right now. So if they're buying at 50K, like I hope it keeps going up for their sake, but we'll see what happens. I want to kick that over to Naomi, see what you think about that as someone who's been in the space for so long.
I mean, it's a huge gamble, right? It's sort of what we were talking about when we mentioned Musk, a company just going so much into Bitcoin, having that on their books, having their treasury reserve assets in that. Like, that's a big vote of confidence for crypto and against the US dollar. And Michael Saylor's been pretty explicit about that, saying that he believes Bitcoin is far better store of value, and it's going to be safer for his cash to actually be transferred into Bitcoin. So I understand that fear mindset at the moment. Whether it's a good idea to have his business so intrinsically tied to the price of Bitcoin remains to be seen. As we said earlier, Zach, you mentioned the price just going down to like 3,000 like last year, and just like in March, and then it comes all the way back. We're at 50K. So anything can happen in this space. We're super bullish now, but we were super bullish when it was at 10K and almost at 20K, and then it went down for like 3 years, right? So there's a lot that could happen in crypto. I hope that they have enough other reserves on hand that they can cover themselves if there is a huge crash in price, which is definitely on the cards for Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think, Will, what you got at with this idea of Bitcoin proxy stocks is really interesting. While there is no Bitcoin ETF on the market, stocks like MicroStrategy are sort of starting to trade in parallel with Bitcoin price. There's like big names who own a lot of MicroStrategy, like Morgan Stanley, for instance, owns something like 11% of outstanding MicroStrategy shares. So it is interesting to see people approach these companies that tie their fate to the strength of Bitcoin, become a way for traditional investors to get access to this emerging asset class without having to deal with all the nonsense of having the asset itself. So I think for me, it is interesting to see the correlation tightening between what Bitcoin is as an asset and what a share of MicroStrategy is as an asset going forward. So to me, I think that's going to be really interesting to see as this company again just keeps doubling down on Bitcoin. It's crazy. What do you do when you have like 4 billion in Bitcoin? Is he just like refreshing his like Coinbase app like continuously? Like, what would you do? Yeah. I don't know. Like Ben, when you have 4 billion in crypto, what's the security parameter that we need to be worried about here for this guy? It's crazy.
I mean, I'm sure he's having dreams about Bitcoin too at this point. I think, what I was curious about, and I think Naomi got at, is, whether they have enough assets on hand to withstand a crash. I think that's, going to be a real question here, particularly if if we do see lows go down, can they last, 3 or 4 years with this being the case? But obviously, maybe they're more with Jen with thinking that it's going to go to 100,000 there, and are obviously very bullish on it.
All right, keep the crystal balls away. We're going to wrap it here. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk to Ben about a big piece that he just published about a crypto app that may be doing a little shady privacy business. And Ben is going to tell us a lot more right after the break. Thanks.
I think about what I would like to cover in history, 20, 30 years ago. Would have been the internet. It would have been the whole social media boom. Now this is our turn. This is this generation's turn to cover the future of money, Web 3.0. We're going to see a huge paradigm shift. We're going to see how it lives digitally, natively in the internet. We're going to see that transformation shift. We're building a financial system across the world with Bitcoin, several other cryptocurrencies, digital currencies made by central banks, and that is going to be epic.
All right, so Android versions of popular cryptocurrency app Bitcoin Ticker Widget and a seeming clone of Steemit Earn Money, included software development kit tools that extract extensive data on users and are potentially linked to a notorious location tracking company, Xmode, that has been banned from the Google App Stores and Apple App Stores, according to a new report from ExpressVPN Digital Security Labs. And so this, I thought, was just really interesting. Some of the appeal of crypto and some of the appeal of decentralized mechanisms that are being developed in this space are to protect user privacy. And here we have, seemingly a really popular Bitcoin price tracking app that has been downloaded over 1 million times, have some questionable data trackers involved with it. So I was just really struck with this report. But, Naomi, I know you care a lot about privacy in this space. What's your kind of immediate reaction here?
I mean, it's not the first time we've seen things like Bitcoin trackers, price trackers having this sort of malware or tracking in there. There have been more insidious things where it actually has been malware trying to phish for keys and things like that. And the problem is that it's so difficult to find these things, right? Because either they're closed source or even if they're open source, how many people are auditing the code of all this stuff, And so that's the problem. That's the danger with the digital world, is that there are all of these avenues, there are all these vulnerabilities, attack vectors that people can exploit. I think in this case, it's almost like it's kind of going under the radar because it's not even malware. It's just like taking data, and a lot of the people who use this stuff haven't yet woken up to why that could be dangerous for them, why it could be dangerous for a company to be collecting all this information about them. And I think that it's definitely an education battle that we're fighting right now, to let people know, like, this is something you should be pushing back against. You should be reading the terms of service, but it's difficult. And I'm not sure we'll ever get to a point where people do those things. So, things like this are going to keep happening.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because what I feel like this illuminates is just, this is the way that, data works right now. Like, this is actually somewhat normal, even though once if you lay it out, you think it's insidious, you might be uncomfortable with it. Unless you're really combing through these things in fine-grained detail, you're not going to know this. And, people ask all the time, why does privacy matter? If I'm not doing anything wrong, why do people care about having my data? But, looking at this, there is so much information that can be gleaned from multiple different data sources that you're feeding into constantly. And that creates a profile of who you are as a person. So even if you think, you might be private, like, people might not be able to find information about you, so much of it is out there already. But Will, I'd be curious to get your initial reactions to this.
No, I'm totally with Naomi. I don't think this is necessarily surprising. I think the ethos of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency itself is what attracts people to the space, but those people who are attracted to the space are not necessarily privacy oriented. I think they're money oriented. And so when you see these kind of, people coming in and trying to steal your data, get your private keys, track you for whatever reason, it really shouldn't come as something that's like mind-boggling. People want money and they're going to do whatever they can with the skill set they have. And crypto right now has a privacy problem, and that is the cutting edge for every single large blockchain. Everything that's going on Bitcoin that's interesting is privacy related. Everything going on Ethereum right now is privacy related. And that's why some of these privacy reports that you're writing right now are some of those important pieces, even if people don't understand them right now. If you have 50K in Bitcoin because you were lucky enough to buy one, you're welcome. Just give you a little pat on the back virtually. If you're lucky enough to buy Bitcoin and have 50K of it right now, just by buying one earlier, you have a stake in having some sort of privacy oriented with this. The digital future needs to be private. Otherwise, people are just going to keep losing money over time. So I'm going to throw this down to Jen as someone who's really been in the space looking at media and how these things kind of interop together.
Yeah. So, I mean, we talk about people really understanding what they're getting into when they use these apps and, combing through the code and reading the terms and conditions. But when I hear that, how many people actually know how to comb through this code and understand those terms and conditions? And it makes me think, like, what needs to be done on a greater scale to actually have people understand what they're getting into when they use these apps. And Will, like you said, maybe they don't care, but I think people are going to start caring, and we're gonna see some major shifts when it comes to the attempt to regulate this.
And I think that's why it's so important to have companies like Apple who are pushing back on our behalf. You know, they haven't been perfect when it comes to privacy, but they've been a whole lot better than Google. They've been a whole lot better than Facebook was. Facebook is starting to do some things that are more in favor of privacy, but they have a long way to go. But it's companies like Facebook, like Apple, that are now saying, well, we're going to have to get everyone to opt in to this tracking stuff. You have to actually click a thing that says, I will let you track me before these apps are allowed to do this. A lot of apps are pushing back against that. But I think that that's what we need. People, as you said, they don't want to have to do this for themselves. They're not experts in this field. So they are relying on companies that have, privacy as a top agenda. So we're lucky that Apple does, but all it takes is a little bit of pressure on a certain, particular leverage spot, and that could be changed in an instant. So it's definitely not something we can rely on.
No, absolutely. And, speaking about another digital currency with some other privacy concerns, Jen, I believe you want to talk to us about CBDCs.
Yeah, so it sounds like it feels like every time we speak, Bitcoin hits a new milestone, and its rising popularity is putting pressure on central banks to issue their own digital currencies. And so I want to talk to you guys about the difference. There's a big difference between central bank digital currencies and cryptocurrencies and DeFi. And I think that a mainstream audience hearing these headlines and reading these headlines may not understand the differences. So I just really want to break it down. I want to get to like a really granular level. And Naomi, let's start with you.
Well, I don't see central bank digital currencies as being any different from what they're doing currently, because if we think about it, all the money is in the ether. It's all ones and zeros. It's all digital. It's not like they have giant vaults filled with cash and that accounts to everything in our bank accounts and all of that. And so when they're dealing in this electronic world, what are they creating? Is it going to be a public database? Is it going to, what sort of auditing is on the issuer? There's so much opacity there, and that this is never going to be audited. So is this any different to our current scenario? I don't think so at all. I think it's just another way for them to keep track, like a database keeping track of money, and it's really not a change from our current system. I don't know, Zach, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think CBDCs certainly have been discussed. I remember, we were at Davos 2020, the World Economic Forum, and CBDCs sort of had a big moment in the limelight among some of the more powerful people in the world. Since then, there's been fits and starts of people central banks developing this stuff, but still the proof is going to be in the pudding, right? Being able to roll these out at scale at a retail level is going to be a challenge. It certainly, I think, provides some advantages to citizens and certainly central bankers, but it does seem a long way out. But certainly people are building for that future. And I think the privacy implications are interesting. And I'm curious to know, about Will kind of looking into this stuff. He's looking into ZK rollups and other privacy preserving technologies that exist on these public blockchains. Do you know if anything along those lines is being incorporated in the CBDC space, Will?
I don't know particularly about ZK rollups. I would assume so, given the nature of these public blockchains have like limited scaling capacity, and they need some sort of rollup solution, which is like a secondary layer on top of a blockchain for processing more transactions. To kind of get back over to Naomi's point about what are the advantages of CBDC, I think there are some for central banks, but I don't know if there's any advantages for the normal consumer over the digital dollars that we use right now. And the way I mean that is that central banks, if they have CBDCs, can basically track wherever their dollars are going in a much more efficient way than they can track current digital dollars. And so I would see them being interested in doing it that way. But I see Ben has some thoughts maybe on the privacy orientations here.
Yeah, I mean, CBDCs don't have to be based on blockchain too. I know China's sort of rolling out theirs, and theirs is not. They might be the most advanced in regards to this. And I wrote about this previously. A report from the Center for New American Security came out and looked kind of in depth at the Chinese model of this and how there are some real privacy concerns given the information that can be gleaned and the behavior that can be gleaned from your financial transactions. And this just really gives full access to central banks to a lot of those things. What privacy considerations are going to be implemented is a really important conversation, but there is also the very real situation in which those are not implemented. And this becomes another sort of tool of a centralized state for, various forms of data gathering. And that's something, we should definitely be thinking about, and something that, acutely differentiates it from cryptocurrencies, I think.
Yeah, it seems like that's the first step in getting rid of cash, right? They create these central bank digital currencies, and then they start to say, well, actually, you have to use this to pay for things. And then they start to outlaw cash. They've got cash bans everywhere else in the world. They've got them in Australia. They've got them in the UK. They're going to start happening in the US as well. And then we're going to suddenly lose our ability to make transfers of money, make transactions without it being tracked and everything we're doing being monitored, which to me is a really dangerous scenario.
Sounds like the moral of the story here is CBDCs are not the solution.
I think they're just another tool, they're just a tool, and it's important to articulate what tools' benefits are and what their downsides are. That's really it.
For sure. Well, I'm going to leave it there and have a short break. But coming up, Grimes is entering the NFT space. More on that after the break. So big news on the NFT front. We got a tweet from Tyler Winklevoss, who's the co-founder of Gemini, who said, big NFT news, Grimes is coming to Nifty Gateway. She will be dropping the War Nymph collection on February 28th. This is going to be bonkers, especially if Musk starts bidding. It's pretty huge news, especially considering that Elon Musk recently dove into the crypto space, bought a ton of Bitcoin via Tesla, and now Grimes, his partner, is entering the NFT space. Of course, Nifty is an NFT platform that was acquired by Gemini, I think, 2019. And fun fact about that, I don't know if you guys know, did you know that Nifty was created by identical twins? So the Winklevoss brothers are identical twins, and Nifty was created. I think that's kind of cool. But what's more cool is this NFT boom. It's super interesting. Will, I'm going to throw this to you. What are your thoughts on this world and all these people who are just jumping into the NFT world right now?
Will loves NFTs.
Yeah, I think most things are. Go ahead. What did you say, Jen?
I said you love NFTs.
You just take a swipe at me on TV? No, NFTs are. A few weeks ago, I was talking with another publication about NFTs, just kind of explaining it, because it's like a very weird idea. Like, I want to tokenize a JPEG. And to me, at the time, I was like, kind of stupid. But I've been thinking more and talking with some other people, and they've been kind of changing my opinion on it. NFTs are just to explain the tech really quick, we've talked about them on the show before. NFTs are basically a way you can tokenize music or artwork or collectibles and then tag that token onto a blockchain with the idea that that address where the token is stored is kind of like a proof of ownership, like a certificate, like you would have a certificate for a stock back in the day on paper. I think they're kind of cool. Depends on which NFTs. I think that as we see more NFTs come out, older ones are going to be more rare. The more intricate ones are going to be more rare, like Hash Mask is a very rare NFT collection. I think there's only 16,000 that are ever made, and they all like work together in this different messaging system that can you can decipher ones that work together, which is kind of a cool idea. But I'm not the biggest NFT bull on this show. It's actually Zach. I think he has like 50, right?
Big time. I don't know if I have that many. You know who has the most NFTs is Brady. He is like an OG NFT collector, so it's cool to see him come up. I actually saw a piece. I didn't read it yet. It's an open tab. I'm really excited to read it. It's by Jesse Walden, who is an investor with a fund called Variant Fund, and their thesis is like the ownership economy, right? Where right now sort of people and their data are sort of owned by these big platforms. And sort of the investment thesis there is that we, with blockchain and other distributed technologies, have the ability to flip that on its head, where people can own the platforms that they participate in and be rewarded for doing so. So his headline on this piece that I'm really excited to read is NFTs make the internet ownable. And I think right now we're starting to see the promise of that. That's starting to dawn on people that this is a way to retain ownership in the digital realm. So we're seeing it with Grimes. I think there's some other announcements from Nifty Gateway in the works. Such esteemed auction houses as Christie's even announced today, I think it was, that they're going to be doing an NFT auction from prominent NFT artist Beeple. So people are experimenting in this space. Bigger and bigger brands are experimenting in this space. I was online yesterday looking at NBA Top Shot because they are made by the folks who made CryptoKitties. CryptoKitties famously broke the Ethereum blockchain back in like 2017, just over being like overwhelmed by demand. So they went and built their own blockchain, and all of a sudden their Flow blockchain is being overwhelmed by demand for their NBA Top Shot digital collectibles. So it's really interesting to watch this unfold as people sort of, again, recognize the promise of ownable digital goods. And the experiments are just going to get crazier and crazier going forward. And I think that's what the Grimes thing represents. And I'm sure we'll see cool things in the months and days ahead. But Ben, what's up?
Yeah, no, the Top Shot thing has just fully made it into the mainstream too. Like I listen to a lot of NBA podcasts and I hear people talking about it all the time and just comparing it to, the value of like rare trading cards, and getting in on those for young players or rookies that are just coming out and their value 3 or 4 years later, which are apparently exponentially increasing too. I was not aware of this before I was told about it. But, the Top Shot thing I think is really interesting because it does represent a really mainstream crossover here and something that is surging in demand in terms of owning, the hash of like a huge dunk or somebody getting posterized or anything else. So I think that's a really interesting just sort of cross section where a mainstream audience can learn a lot about the value of NFTs if they see value in them.
Can the hash enter the NFT space?
I hope so.
Maybe. I would love. Next time we hang out, I can posterize you with a sick dunk, and then we can make an NFT of it. What do you think?
6-inch vertical is going to do
okay,
a lot of
I can get behind that.
We can get a hash pickup game and get ourselves into the NFT space. Okay, well, we'll leave it there with my grand visions of basketball superstardom. Thanks so much for joining us on the Hash this fine Tuesday. Naomi, great work. Ben, Jen, Will, y'all killed it. Thanks so much. Stick with us on CoinDesk TV later today, 3 p.m. Bitcoin advocate and Lolly investor Michelle Phan joins Christine Lee on All About Bitcoin. Should be a great show. Please tune in. All right, I'll talk to you tomorrow. See you.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.